Story 1. Cartel hacking someone who was still alive. I am usually good at avoiding situations like that. Somehow, I got tricked with a "hey man, look at this." Story 2. This reminds me of a site called rotten.com. You could see all kinds of things there. I remember seeing a guy's head cut in half by a helicopter blade or the aftermath of a close-up shotgun wound to the head. It is still viewable via the Wayback Machine. Story 3. The Russian dashcam video of the brick will haunt me forever. Edit. Seriously, do not seek it out. I have seen chainsaw beheadings, people burned to death in car accidents, and men dismembered by lathes. All of those fade with time. But the screams of a man who just violently lost the person who meant everything to him, I can still clearly hear them, and it has been over a decade since I saw it. Story 4. I was browsing Reddit in the new category and saw what I think was an Islamic State beheading. A man had his head chopped off with a machete. It was so intense and graphic that I thought it was just well-rendered game or video footage, and there was no way it could be real. It took a minute to process, but it was in fact real. It left me shaken. Story 5. One person who was live streaming shot himself. The shot itself was not very visible, but his suffering moans, where you could literally hear his life fading, were quite shocking. Story 6. Not some graphic cartel video, but I saw a video on Instagram of a girl who had just turned 18, crying in a bathroom and talking about how she was raped by a homeless man. I cannot forget the shaking in her voice as she tried to hold it in. There are other videos showing how she had to escape gunfights and dangerous people since she lives in a poor area in the United States. Story 7. The video shows a loose brick falling off a truck and smashing through the front windshield of the car behind. Kills the wife of the driver. You do not even see it, but the howl he lets out is the most agonizing and heartbreaking sound I have ever heard. It is haunting and unforgettable. Do not watch it if you are sensitive. Story 8. Not physically seen, but I watched one of those YouTube channels that creates police case videos do a video explaining the Junko Furuta case. I'm pretty sure it made me feel about as close to throwing up as someone can be. Story 9. I saw a video on Reddit of a young teenage girl playing with a gun in the bathroom with her cousin during a family gathering. She shoots her cousin in the head, panics, picks the gun back up, puts it under her chin, and pulls the trigger. I have seen many real-life violent deaths, but this video will haunt me for the rest of my life. Story 10. Adult video where a woman experienced rectal prolapse during the scene, and she repositioned it while the man continued. Story 11. Early 2000s teens had no filter or content moderation. Beheadings, suicides, executions, graphic crime scene photos, along with disturbing content like Two Girls, One Cup and Tub Girl, were common. It was the Wild West. It is hard to pick just one. Early in the War on Terror, murders were posted often. This is unusual now but was common then. Story 12. The Real Tarzan on Instagram posted a video about the horrible treatment dogs receive in areas where people eat dogs. I will not describe what I saw, but occasionally the images flood back into my mind. I wish it were more recent so I could convince myself it was artificial intelligence. Also, the story about the man who went the wrong way in the cave and died upside down after hours of rescue attempts literally makes me kick the quilt off every few weeks because I start to feel like I am in a cave. Story 13. There was a website called Nazaneers back in the day. It was a porn site focused on white men with black women and was fully pro-Nazi. Scenes were set in front of swastika flags, with the men performing the Sieg Heil salute during sex. The black women all appeared downtrodden, as if this was the lowest tier of porn work available. While pornography can often be problematic and lean into racist themes for fetish reasons, this site seemed genuinely hateful. Story 14. Once on 4chan, I saw a video of a 14-year-old girl hanging herself. The top reply was from a person who said he had downloaded it years ago and that it was his favorite adult material. Story 15. I watch a lot of graphic videos. The most shocking ones I can recall are a man who cut a live kitten in two and another where a man was caught in a factory machine that slowly and violently crushed him. There is also a video where a cartel skinned a man alive, cut off his fingers, and injected him with morphine to keep him alive. Story 16. Here on Reddit, particularly in the crazy fucking videos and public freakout communities. Blocked both of those subreddits. The worst was a man on a knife rampage at a playground, stabbing a baby in its stroller while the mother screamed. Story 17. The station nightclub fire. It is the one that has always stuck in my head. I will never forget the screams, the woman asking where her husband is, and the bodies entangled at the front entrance. It is what has stopped me from attending basement shows and made me pay attention to where the fire exits are. Story 18. Two men are facing the camera on their knees. One of them has his head severed with a chainsaw. The other has a completely blank, emotionless face, staring at the camera, while blood and bits are hitting him as he waits his turn. This appeared randomly as a recommendation on YouTube while I was scrolling. I didn't even have time to react. Thank you, YouTube. There was also a video from about 20 years ago where they capture, I believe, a pedophile. They stick a large pole up his anus, and then a group of men raise him so the pole slowly rips through his body and out of his shoulder. A classic file download to the family PC. Story 19. The one of that man who abused and mutilated multiple puppies while making the mother watch, as well as forcing her to eat them. She would lick the lifeless, skinned, and disfigured puppies, trying to heal their wounds. He then went on to do unspeakable things to the poor mother before cutting off his own genitals. Please, whatever you do, do not look up the name or anything related to this monster of a human being. I am not mentioning the name, video, or any links of any kind on purpose, for your own good. Avoid at all costs. Story 20. A flamethrower was used on a live dog at a dog meat market. The video appeared on TikTok, and I was deeply upset for days. It is forever seared into my memory. I deleted TikTok for a few weeks after that. Story 21. I went through a period where I became desensitized to violent content and watched graphic videos for years. I saw things like Taliban members beheading Russian soldiers and cartels torturing and mutilating their rivals. But the image that truly haunted me and gave me nightmares was a photo and video of an African father eating his own baby. Story 22. The video of Luca Magnotta taking the boy's life was terrifying. The loud sound of the video frightened me for a month. Story 23. There are many human stories, of course, but one that really stood out to me was a video of an ostrich stuck in some metal scrap. The poor animal tried to yank its head out and accidentally beheaded itself. The image of its body collapsing while blood poured from the remaining throat was extremely visceral. Story 24. A group execution of a family took place, involving a mother, father, and their son who was about 10 years old. The mother was unclothed. After a brief speech, they were killed by 6 men using axes. Story 25. That one video of Middle Eastern men harming 2 European women who went hiking in a conservative Middle Eastern country. Hearing her cry out, then the sounds of death. Story 26. Reading through these comments is making me realize why some people behave badly. However, the worst things I have seen are those cartel videos. Story 27. I refuse to click on it, but someone just posted a story about a woman in trouble for posting videos of baby monkeys being tortured. People are terrible, and the world would be better if those people disappeared. Story 28. A video of a deceased Palestinian child was shared. The child had half of his head missing and most of his remaining skull hollowed out. I had to feel something from seeing that because I do not want to become desensitized to it. Story 29. The video of Luca Magnotta drowning the cat in the bathtub was included in the Netflix documentary. It still upsets me seriously, even after 4 years. Story 30. Some obvious mentally impaired person was beating a baby monkey to death with a hammer. I saw it because I lived in a transitional house setting, and there are some very sick people who live there. I didn't know monkey hatred was a thing now in certain, strangely affluent circles. But it is. What surprised me was that the little monkey was like the Energizer Bunny until it wasn't. It must be built to endure enormous abuse from its mother and tribe because the person in the video severely injured its genital area, and it hardly screamed. He went hammer down on its joints and broke bones, and yes, it screamed but didn't wail like a human would. It was shocking and disgusting, and this is coming from someone with a tough background who is now retired. Story 31. In my late teens, I regularly watched content that was not safe for life on a site that cannot be named. I have seen everything and wish I could forget, even after 15 years. Story 32. I saw a video where a young woman, who might have been a singer or a content creator from Asia, possibly Japan or Korea, filmed her suicide. She was live streaming at the time and simply said, "Bye, everyone." She then turned the camera around to show a balcony with a railing. She stepped over the railing, leaned forward, and fell to her death. I can still hear the sound of the gate slamming when she hit it and a dog barking. It makes me feel sick just thinking about it. Edit. She was known as Landmine Girl. Story 33. Here on Reddit, I was scrolling through the Call of Duty Warzone subreddit, where someone posted a video of two terrorists killing a white blonde girl by decapitating her alive and laughing while doing it. I was hoping it was fake, but the excessive gore and amateurish camera shaking were undeniably real. Story 34. I was watching an adult video. A GIF advertisement was loading next to the video, showing a petite woman interacting with a man. Story 35. Two young teenagers were filming a video and got into a car accident. One passenger was ejected from the passenger seat, and the driver got out of the car, continued filming, and grabbed the passenger's bleeding head. Story 36. This is not the most disturbing thing I have seen on the internet, but I saw a video where a man gets stuck in a paper rolling machine. Story 37. I saw a beheading video on Newgrounds when I was about 12 years old. My cousin wanted to watch it. We were all around 12 years old watching it on Thanksgiving Day. Story 38. The fact that some people do not monitor teenagers' online behavior, or when they are doing something they should not be doing, leads to consequences such as being sent to jail or worse. Story 39. I saw Two Girls, One Cup a long time ago, and I can only imagine what kind of creepy things are on the internet now. Story 40. Jar Squatter. A naked man squats on a mason jar, which enters him. The jar breaks while inside, causing significant bleeding. Someone at work showed it to me while at work. Story 41. People eating feces directly from the anus. A cartel torturing a father and son, and a woman using a nail file on a man's penis while stimulating him manually. There is some disturbing content out there. If you can imagine the worst, someone has uploaded it somewhere. Story 42. Like the 1,000th person on the thread, a cartel video. 3 women kneeling in front of a group of men, 3 directly behind them holding butcher knives, the rest milling about with axes. The man furthest right behind a woman in a pink top monologues to the camera. Then they suddenly tear off the women's tops, exposing their breasts, and begin slicing their necks. There are guttural screams until they are completely beheaded. The men with knives step back, and the men with axes start hacking their limbs off. The monologue man grabs one of the women's entire legs with the sneaker still on it and waves it in front of the camera, saying something to the effect of, "Send us more of these good-for-nothings. Look what we do to your people." Story 43. A man was working in a factory with a long spinning blade extending from floor to ceiling. I believe a piece of his clothing got caught on it, and it pulled him in, causing him to be disintegrated. Story 44. About 10 years ago, before YouTube censored all their highly disturbing videos, there was a video where a man was trapped in his car, which was on fire. You could not see him clearly, but the sounds of him screaming in brutal agony were extremely upsetting. I can still hear it. It was horrific. Story 45. It is a tie between Pain Olympics and a cartel cutting off a lady's head with a pocket knife. She seemed to endure that process for far too long. Never mind which one wins. Story 46. The one guy, one jar is still the worst thing I have seen. I was around 12 years old. I had been on several disturbing websites and seen all sorts of awful content. A friend and I found bestiality pornography on her brother's computer. Just awful material. But that crack the blood. Story 47. For men, there is always the one where the man wrecks his motorcycle on a fence, walks off, shakes his shorts, and his genitals fall out onto the sidewalk. Story 48. The young man was eaten by a shark in Egypt, I believe. It was quite graphic and made me feel sick for a few days. Story 49. I have seen a lot of disturbing content online, but the transcript of the Toolbox Killer's tape and the few seconds that can be heard outside of the courtroom are bone-chilling. Story 50. There was a girl who my former girlfriend was internet friends with. She was somewhat of a minor celebrity on Instagram. She was killed in a car accident, and the person responsible posted pictures on her story. My former girlfriend and I saw it immediately after it was posted, probably before emergency services were aware. I have dreamt about it several times and can still picture it. Story 51. Video of the attack on October 7th. Footage of hostages and bodies being dragged, beaten, and spat on through the streets of Gaza. Story 52. Oh, easy. People who write your when they mean you are. I still have nightmares about that grammatical massacre. Story 53. I saw the broadcast on Facebook firsthand of the New Zealand mosque shooting, and I couldn't believe my eyes. My stomach literally curled at how someone could do that. Story 54. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by social media, starving for likes and upvotes, dragging themselves through the corporate data farms at dawn looking for an angry fix. Story 55. A man is being held down by a group of men, with his legs spread open, and a dog eagerly devouring his genital area. It is unclear whether the man deserved this treatment, but it is still very disturbing to see, especially the look on his face. Story 56. I saw a man being stabbed to death in the chest with a screwdriver while tied down, screaming in horrific pain. Somebody in my sister's year at school shared it on their social media. My friend also sent me a video of a woman being decapitated by a machete in what looked like South America. There was yellow fluid coming out of her neck. It was horrific. Story 57. Asian man cooking a dog in a giant wok. The dog was alive. I have post-traumatic stress disorder from the brief footage I saw. It was on a friend's social media with no warning about the content. I wish I had never seen or known about it. Story 58. I am not sure what the most disturbing thing I have seen is, but it was probably on Rotten.com back in the day. Story 59. The man who split his face open after diving and missing the water. Also, the case of Junko Furuta. I do not recommend searching for it if you cannot handle stories of violent rape and kidnapping. The case was titled 44 Days in Hell. If you prefer not to read the graphic and detailed version, you can watch the Anime Man's video about it. Story 63 Men, One Hammer. The video itself is disgusting and disturbing, but understanding that it could have happened to me or my friend is really unsettling. After watching it, I could not walk outside for a couple of days without severe anxiety. Story 61. Two men were against a wall. One had his head cut off with a chainsaw, and the other with a knife. I turned my phone off, sat in the dark, and cried. Story 62. I went through a phase of watching the beheading Islamic State videos and the one with the two girls camping. I do not know where my mind was, but now I suffer thinking about the things I watched. Story 63. In the early days, there was a site dedicated to graphic content, similar to 4chan but focused on such material. I was with a group of friends who would watch this. It included anything from suicide caught on camera to bestiality and worse. I am pretty unfazed at this point. I do not remember the last thing I saw that bothered me. The BME Olympics, one guy, one horse, two kids, one sandbox, two girls, one cup, and one guy, one jar started this group. Story 64. Found a site that had everything. Watched everything for days. Some torture and snuff content haunts me to this day. I was 13 or 14 at that time. Story 65. A notable case for me was a man who streamed himself on Discord self-immolating, to the viewer's distress. He was in the mountains and the video quality was poor with parts missing. If I recall correctly, he says something in a European language, then addresses the viewers by saying, "It's time for me to die," with a grim smile. And indeed, he does. The group he belonged to was one of those sextortion groups that target vulnerable individuals, often children, and blackmail them into self-mutilation, harming animals and people, or even suicide. These groups are becoming a significant issue online. Story 66. Maybe not the most traumatic, but I remember a video on Twitter where a guy was jumped on by a horse in a stable, the moment he pulled his pants down. I didn't search for anything. It was on my homepage. Story 67. That boy Junior Guzman was dragged from a convenience store and stabbed by multiple men in a case of mistaken identity because they thought he was the boyfriend of one of their sisters. The look on his face as he pleaded with the store owner not to let them take him was heartbreaking. There was a video of a man sexually assaulting his pet python. I was in a bar when someone showed it to me. I didn't understand what I was seeing until he started using his fingers, but I quickly understood. On the same night, there was also a video of two men assaulting a dog. I no longer go to that bar and never look at things strangers show me on their phones. There was also the incident involving a teenage boy, Tyree Sampson, on a roller coaster with a harness that was too small. The sound of him hitting the ground was sickening. I had not read the caption when the video played on my social media feed. I disabled autoplay that day and have never turned it back on. Story 68. The man was diving off a ledge but did not jump far enough to clear the dock. He hit his face and split it open from top to bottom. The doctors were shown trying to align the two sides of his head back together. He was alive while they were doing it. It looked like the Predator. Story 69. Decades ago, Rotten.com had a story about a man who was running from the police. He jumped from a second-story balcony, attempting to land on the sidewalk just outside a wrought iron fence. He landed too close to the fence, impaled his skull, and severed his head. His head remained stuck atop the iron fence like a hunting trophy. Story 70. Run the Gauntlet. E621. Do not ask. Early YouTube. Ronnie McNuts and censored death via Fortnite TikTok. Too many Instagram death videos to count. And an animation displaying what the Hiroshima bombing was like from a citizen's perspective. Story 71. Back in the early days of the internet, adult content was readily available via network news transfer protocol. Some people thought it would be fun to insert autopsy photos into those threads. Story 72. The station fire video and the brick through the windshield have both affected my behavior ever since I saw them. Story 73. I once saw a woman engaging in inappropriate behavior with a dog while flipping through live videos on a random video chat platform. This was around 2010. Story 74. Fucked has some interesting content. As a kid, we used to go on steakandcheese.com and send each other shocking material through the school email system. I'm not sure if it still exists, but old users will know it. I saw some snuff material which really disturbed me because I was too young for that. There is a lot of strange content, but I guess you can become desensitized quickly. I worry for the current generation. Story 75. When I was around 13 years old, I started using Reddit for the first time. This was in the early 2010s. I stumbled across Watch People Die and, being the naive child I was, thought, this couldn't be that bad. I saw a video of a man who was lit on fire and was running around, screaming. His voice was haunting, and I saw the video in my nightmares for years. Story 76. There are many disturbing videos available now due to wars and GoPro cameras. When the war in Ukraine started, I watched several videos out of curiosity. If you are curious, yes, bodies can be propelled into the air like you would see in the video game Call of Duty. I even saw a body caught on a fence. The most disturbing video showed two men hit by a grenade who fell into a river and drowned. They had concussions and could not swim. I don't know why, but I will never forget it. Story 77. My personal experience involved a video circulating some time ago of a man leaping to his death. You could see his head make impact first with the concrete, and his skull basically explode. It was disturbing for me at the time. I was about 14 years old. Story 78. For a short while after I left the military, I used to watch a lot of graphic videos. I saw and experienced some terrible things in Afghanistan. But seeing online what cartels do to people is extremely disturbing. There was a video called There's No Mercy in Mexico. I think that was the name. Showing a father and a son tied up. The father was beheaded with a box cutter, and then the child was gutted. It was horrifying. Story 79. Depends. For cartel videos, I saw two girls get beheaded with a Bowie knife. The ripping and gnawing of the flesh I can still hear. For suicides, I watched a woman jump off a building in Japan, and all her limbs detached like Lego hands. Story 80. If you want unique text, here is the raw text of the Mahia supermarket, University City's Seafood City, and the Baravian Meats incident in North Bay. Story 81. One time, I saw a man who was a victim of a car crash. The skin on his face, or what was left of it, was hanging off to the side. It looked like a fleshy masquerade mask with a bloody outline. His actual face was just a sort of mush with no structure. It really disturbed me, and I felt sad for a few days. Story 82. I saw someone with a weapon during the terrorist attack in Paris. The attacker shot someone in the head after the victim pleaded for mercy on the same street where I lived. This experience left a lasting impression on me. Story 83. I grew up in the 1990s and regularly visited Rotten.com. I watched the ISIS or Taliban video of Nicholas Berg, where they cut his head off with what seemed like a butter knife and had nightmares for 3 months. To this day, I do not watch that content anymore. Story 84. One of the ISIS executions involved shooting a man in the face with an assault rifle from about 3 feet away, and the man's head just popped. His eyes bulged, and it was extremely disturbing. That one stayed with me. Story 85. Faces of Death website. I remember a photo of a man who had jumped off the Eiffel Tower. He was basically a pool of blood and flesh. Also, the girl who crashed her car, killing her sister. She was live streaming and showed her deceased sister with her head split open down to her eyes. Story 86. A couple was murdered by the drug cartel. The man was already dead, but his partner went through extreme suffering and did not make a sound, as if she had accepted her fate. It was absolutely horrifying. Story 87. Back when Watch People Die was a subreddit, I saw an Islamic State member behead a 12-year-old with a pocket knife. The other day on There Was an Attempt, I saw an elephant step on, fold, and step on again, then flap like a towel its human abuser. Story 88. That photo of a Middle Eastern man who had his face and brain rearranged by a .50 caliber round is disturbing. The only thing that comes close is the footage of the deceased from yesterday's plane crash in India. Story 89. One story involved a man who was injured by a horse and later died. I do not remember how I came across that one. There was also a video I saw online of a man who shot himself in the head live on television during a debate. Story 90. The knife fight between the Ukrainian and Yakut Russian soldier is unforgettable. I can still hear him shouting Baza and see the blood dripping down his beard. Now, when I have nightmares about fighting, I dream of my belly being cut open and getting stabbed in the hand. I would rather watch the aftermath of the Indian plane crash 100 times than watch that fight again. Story 91. Some person using a snake's cloaca as a fleshlight. Story 92. The thrill of the internet when it first emerged socially can never be replicated or fully understood unless you were there. There was a wave of graphic videos and links. Rotten.com was a rite of passage, but an awful one. We all visited it. I am genuinely upset still by some things I saw or was sent back in the day. I avoid overly graphic content now. Someone's death is not a spectator sport for us to rubberneck. I worry about how many people now film incidents or accidents without trying to help. Story 93. Someone showed me an Islamic State execution where they ran a man over with his own tank, completely flattening him. Story 94. A dog beheading. The poster did not mark it as not safe for work on Reddit for some reason. Multiple people called them out, but nothing happened. The moderators deleted it after 12 hours. Story 95. On Facebook, a group named Tripe Soup in my language included actual graphic murder and beheadings. My classmates would browse it as a pastime in school, so I would occasionally see what was on their phones. The group had a large community, including my classmates, who excitedly commented, posted, and looked forward to it. There was also an inside joke where if people searched for recipes because of the group name, they would just get gore in the comments and people mocking them. Story 96. It was on a subreddit that no longer exists. I think it was either a 50-50 or morbid curiosity subreddit. There was a man who shot himself point blank in the head with a shotgun. It still haunts me to this day. Story 97. This memory came from a social media platform. I clicked on a friend's link, and it was a video of a man performing a cliff dive with friends. He missed the landing and essentially split his face in half, impaling it on a post. Someone recorded emergency workers in a room with him, holding the two halves of his face. He appeared conscious and was trying to talk, but his head was severely injured. I cannot properly describe it. It was awful. I regret opening that link. I had no idea what I was about to see. Story 98. I almost watched 2, maybe 3 guys with one hammer, but I was thankfully too scared to click. I have seen screenshots, though. Story 99. Eric Garner. I now refuse to watch any police videos of someone dying due to police brutality. Story 100. Growing up with unsupervised access to the internet and sites like Rotten.com, followed by Instagram filled with clips of death, I have become pretty numb to most things. Story 101. One of those undercover people for the ethical treatment of animals videos about the fur farming industry. A friend sent me it in good faith when I was a young teen because she thought it was just a video to raise awareness of animal cruelty, not realizing that it actually showed any. I have a pretty strong stomach when it comes to gore, but seeing what I think was a mink being skinned alive and still trying to breathe afterward nearly made me violently ill. I do not support or trust people for the ethical treatment of animals as far as I could throw them, so part of me hopes it was staged or faked, but I am not willing to put myself through watching it again to confirm. Also, years ago there was a Channel 4 documentary about international animal cruelty in the meat industry which I did not watch, but I remember the advertisement for it showed some censored footage of animals in cages and some writhing around inside containers in a busy market along with the narrated line "cats plunged into pressure cookers." That one line has remained welded into my brain ever since. Just the concept of it turns my stomach. Story 102. Accidentally clicked on the Daniel Pearl beheading video. I still cannot unsee it after all these years. Story 103. I once saw a woman with a penis with a man with a vagina. It took longer than I would like to admit to understand what was going on. It is not necessarily the most disturbing thing I have seen, but it confused me because I really could not understand what I was witnessing. Story 104. Either the airplane that crashed into a group of people at an airshow, with bits of people on the ground in the aftermath, or the thumbnail of a man's foreskin spread apart with fish hooks. Story 105. There was a man who jumped or fell off a building, landing on a concrete bollard. It penetrated, and he moved for an unsettling amount of time, looking around and moving his arms. Story 106. When I was 15 and spent a lot of time exploring the internet, I came across child sexual abuse material involving an infant. I reported it to the authorities, but it deeply affected me for a long time. Story 107. In 2006, I watched 2 men kneeling with their hands tied. A cartel member cut one man's head off with a chainsaw, and the saw bit into the other man's arm. It was wild back then. Story 108. For those of us around in the early days of the internet, Rotten.com was a treasure trove of gruesomeness that people with sadistic streaks would use to shock their friends. Unfortunately, decades later, I will never unsee that little boy getting hit by that train. Story 109. I remember seeing the overpass that collapsed from the point of view of the cars just out from underneath. I can still hear the sounds of the car horns. I now get very anxious stopping under overpasses. Story 110. I think it is called Pac-Man murder. A woman's hands are cut off and her head is almost severed. But she is not dead. You can still hear her breathing and trying to talk. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria murder of the pilot burned alive in the cage was horrific. Story 111. Back in the early 2000s, when the internet was a wild place, I came across a video of a man in a dress and wig, resembling a little Debbie, placing his finger in the eye socket of a newly butchered cow skull. I have no idea how I ended up there. Story 112. Back in the early 2000s, when the internet was unregulated, I came across a video of a man in a dress and wig, resembling a character named Debbie, placing his finger in the eye socket of a freshly butchered cow skull. I have no idea how I found that video. Story 113. Definitely nowhere near the worst, but the scene in Hotel Rwanda where they drive over all the dead bodies gave me a new perspective on the evils of the world. Story 114. I was on an illegal website trying to watch a show, and in the corner, I saw a man abusing a child. That image is going to haunt me forever. Story 115. A student in high school sent illegal videos and graphic content to a group chat with my friends. This incident still affects me to this day. Story 116. I accidentally came across a subreddit called Fluffies. I won't say much about what they are, but imagine an adorable creature. A small pony the size of a pug. Now imagine cute little comics featuring them. They are so adorable. Then the comics take a dark turn, depicting these ponies' brutal and gruesome deaths. Story 117. The video shows a man jumping off a building who gets impaled on a pole between his legs on the way down. The pole is lodged in his shoulder, and it appears that he did not die immediately. Story 118. At 14, I received a link from a trusted male acquaintance, approximately 20 years old. The message said, "This looks fun. Maybe we could try," or something similar. I clicked the link naively. The video showed a large dog positioned behind a woman who was not in a consenting position. I stopped watching before anything else occurred, but the image still disgusts me deeply, and I continue to have flashbacks of that scene when trying to sleep. Story 119. Does anyone else remember the girl who fell onto the electrical wires, like the ones you see outside or sometimes in movies with shoes hanging from them, and sat there lifeless with her head falling off? Scary as hell. Also, does anyone else remember the man who had his hand stuck in a spinning machine, got pulled in, and all of his guts flew everywhere? Story 120. When I was a sad teenager, I watched a video that circulated of a young teenager hanging herself in her family's yard. You could hear them searching for her and calling her name. Story 121. A man had his arms and legs cut off with a sharp butcher's knife. His hands were tied behind his back, and he was chained to the ground by the neck, facing upwards. He was awake, possibly due to drugs or something given to him. The noises he made and the visuals will be forever branded in my mind. It was a cartel video. They were laughing at him while he made this awful sound of agony and despair. It is hard to explain. I will remember it until the day I die. Story 122. On the Darwin Awards subreddit, I saw a man's carotid artery get pierced by a bull, and a woman's head get struck by a bus and a light pole. Disgusting incidents. Story 123. Video of the Christchurch Mosque attack livestream with Vengaboy's Boom 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 playing in the background. Story 124. Back in the 1990s, an online friend sent me a video and told me to check it out. After waiting forever for it to download, I clicked on it. It was a video of a person being executed at what looked like a Holocaust camp. The man was all skin and bones. He was thrown to the ground. A soldier stabbed a knife into his neck and slowly started carving it out. The prisoner was weakly trying to stop it as it happened. 30 years later, I can still vividly see it. I stopped engaging with that friend because he thought it was an awesome video. Story 125. I have seen many suicide and torture videos. Honestly, I feel somewhat desensitized now. I do not know if that is a good thing. Story 126. Easily the pain Olympics. The wild things people are willingly doing to their bodies for money is mental. Specifically, the 15-second clip of the man who put 10 slits on his penis with a craft knife and pours an entire bottle of isopropyl alcohol on it while maintaining an erection. Story 127. I cannot process this request as it contains inappropriate content. Story 128. 2 girls, 1 cup. If you know. Most people who saw it did not want to. I had someone show that to me at my company. I sent them home for a few days to evaluate their life. Story 129. Back in the Napster and Kazaa days, Compaq sold their consumer PCs with networking completely open. I basically learned a way to scan PCs of Napster and Kazaa users, got the IP address into the network basic input-output system, and could see all their shared folders, typically the entire hard drive. I was scanning everyone's PCs looking for MP3 files. It was a slow but consistent process. I found a PC from San Diego containing illegal content. The first image I saw was the silhouette of a naked child tied to a toilet, unconscious. The videos included film-to-video copies. I will not go into detail because it was horrific. After the shock, I collected all the information I could about the person and called the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I told them everything, deleted Kazaa and Napster, and never went snooping on people's PCs again. Story 130. When you remember those cartel videos, keep in mind who was fighting at our southern border. There is too much. The most heartbreaking was a video of a little girl walking alone, disheveled, with blood running down her legs when immigration and customs enforcement found her. She had been trafficked by the cartel from Venezuela, and what they did to her was very bad. That was my "we need to shut our southern border down" moment in life. Story 131. My Little Pony fan comic where Ember and Rarity attack Spike, physically and verbally abusing him to death. It is more disturbing knowing that the creator put significant time and effort into making the art style very close to the original series. The fact that someone made this is what troubles me the most. I do not hate any fictional character enough to invest so much effort into creating something like that. Story 132. A man cut off the head of his penis with a knife and then came out of the end of the newly cropped appendage while spraying blood. Story 133. A picture of two girls who killed a pregnant mother cat and cut her babies out of her. Human gore does not faze me anymore, but animal cruelty always affects me. Story 134. It's a tie between cartel hacking the guy's hands off, cutting his tongue out, and doing something I don't remember with his eyeballs, and three guys one hammer. Both left me with an indescribable bad feeling. Story 135. The terrorist attack in France involved a French police officer who was shot in the leg and fell down. The terrorist then calmly approached him and shot him in the head with an AK-47. Scenes like that remain burned in my memory forever. I am glad incidents like that are not posted on Reddit very often. Story 136. Ronnie McNutt died by suicide on a live stream. There was also a Russian man who was caught in a lathe. Curiosity got the best of me. Story 137. Oh man, little teenage me was always intoxicated. I saw a man get beheaded with a dull knife. I can still hear the sounds. The internet was wild back then. Story 138. A woman who got her face cut halfway in a Pac-Man style is still alive and coughing on her own blood. Also, a girl who had her entire face ripped off was still screaming and moving around. Story 139. It was just a live stream of a man talking to the camera. Then, without warning, he ended his life. I did not sleep for days. Story 140. Old Islamic State videos. Watched one where they ran over a prisoner with a tank, burned him alive, and performed beheadings. 14-year-old me was traumatized. Story 141. My adult daughter was sent a video that she showed me without explanation. It depicted two men being beheaded, one with a saw and one with a chainsaw. I will never be the same. Story 142. I have been around since the Ogreish Guy's Hammer, Guyjar, and Narco Executions days. I am probably desensitized. However, I would never watch again the 911 call of a little girl begging for help while her father stabbed her mother in front of her. That was the worst. Story 143. I don't know. I have become so desensitized that nothing disturbs me anymore. I have seen it all. From old clips of Japanese women stuffing live cephalopods up themselves to beheadings. I guess the one that stays in my mind is still swap.avi. It is tame by today's standards, but I have an aversion to such content. Story 144. A woman who was literally just an untouched head on a flayed, fleshless length of her spine. It was on Reddit, one of the serial killer subreddits, and I clicked to unblur the not safe for work filter. Usually, gory photos don't bother me, and on those subreddits, they tend to be more scientific autopsy-style images. This was such a strange and horrific image that I can still see it in my mind. I actually questioned if it was real because her face was intact. You could see her eyes and expression. Then she was just a length of bloody spine. I can't remember her name or anything. I think she was killed by her boyfriend who had a medical background, and he had just surgically taken her to bits. It was such a horrific photo. Nothing has stayed with me like that has. Story 145. Beheading of an American soldier with a dull machete. Saw it in school in computer science class. A classmate said, "Dude, look at this," and I am still upset about it. Story 146. That disturbing kitten blender video that circulated on Discord and TikTok for a few weeks. I have seen a lot of content, having been a reckless teenager on the internet in the early 2010s, but that video stays with me strongly. Story 147. A man took his own life after his girlfriend was unfaithful to him. He was a military veteran. It is the saddest thing when someone becomes overwhelmed by such circumstances. Story 148. Honestly, I have seen a lot of graphic content and I really hate it. I just commented about Funky Town, which was disturbing, and I never want to see that again. But honestly, the thing that stuck with me the most was when I found Dear Zachary on YouTube. I had no idea what I was getting into. I just thought it was a documentary about a man who died. I was not the same for weeks. I would recommend it and also not recommend it at the same time. If you want to have a good cry, put it on. Story 149. Some guy putting firecrackers where they should never go at least 4 to 6 times in one go. I can never forget that. Or the guy who split his face while jumping off a bridge and seeing his body still breathe and his two halves of a face moving. Even a few seconds of some poor girl chained up and being assaulted in a car. God, the internet is awful. Story 150. Jesus, some of these are so dark. How about something a little more lighthearted? 2 homeless men. One is sitting and smoking crack. The man next to him is on his knees, with his face and bare rear end pointed at the first man. After the first man takes a hit, he leans over and blows the smoke into the other man's rear end. Crazy world, man. Story 151. I can't remember the name, but it was something like 3 guys, 1 hammer. And that was more than enough terrible for my entire life. Story 152. The video shows a Ukrainian soldier moving through buildings with his GoPro attached to his head. He finds a Russian soldier and starts shooting. Showing bravery, he moves to his building. The Russian comes out the side entrance, and what follows is the most horrendous video of unarmed combat with a knife I will ever see or hear. The raw emotion, panic, anger, and finally acceptance of death was nothing short of chilling. Worse still, the camera is attached to the soldier who loses. No more combat footage for me. Story 153. Not at all gory, but really disturbing to think about. I saw a video of a group of people digging a hole in river ice. A girl jumps in and immediately gets swept under the ice. Gone. Her partner jumps in to try and get her out, but quickly realizes how fierce the current is and barely makes it out himself. Everyone stands there awkwardly, unable to comprehend what just happened. It is similar to a video of a drunk man jumping off a cruise ship in the middle of the night, then disappearing on the horizon. One lapse in judgment. One intrusive thought acted upon, and they are gone. Story 154. The man had cartel dogs after him. A dog was biting his flesh in the crotch area. The man was still alive and in shock. Story 155. I have seen some disturbing graphic content online, but one that has always stuck with me is a video of a muscular fraternity member assaulting another man in his own apartment. The sounds he makes as he violently strikes the man in a surprise attack are unforgettable. Story 156. The man's head was split open like a melon after hitting a pier from a high height when he misjudged the distance to the water. Story 157. Seeing a man executed by hanging was rather unpleasant. I know there is worse out there, but I am fine without it. Story 158. I saw a group of children kick a puppy back and forth until it died. I believe they continued after that. I stopped watching. Story 159. Many years ago, I saw a man die from injuries caused by a horse. Mr. Hands, I think. There have been multiple deaths, car accidents, and executions. I had some friends who were on the dark web. I ordered drugs through them at one time. We saw some murder videos together that were so disturbing we couldn't look away quickly enough. People can be cruel. Story 160. I somehow came across a People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals video where men savagely beat and skinned what I believe was a dog. The animal was so badly beaten and malnourished that it was difficult to tell. They skinned it alive and then showed it on the ground, still blinking and alive. I think I was 12 years old. Story 161. I was looking at open internet protocol cameras, which are usually like hotel lobbies, and stumbled upon a Vietnamese camera in a house where a teenage daughter was locked in a room and repeatedly sexually abused by her mother, father, and brother. Over a few days I recorded it. I knew it was live because on other cameras, the brother was watching the National Basketball Association playoffs live. After a few days of documenting everything I could, they walked her outside as she pleaded no, and she never came back inside. Later that day, in the office, a suitcase of money was given to someone who did not live there, presumably to dispose of her. It affected me deeply for a few months. A friend from high school was in the United States Secret Service, so I gave her all of my videos, camera IP addresses, and all of the open source intelligence work I did to identify the names of the mother and father and the address. Since they spoke clear English, they may have been dual citizens. I hope someone did something. Poor girl. I do not look at internet protocol cameras anymore. My Secret Service friend said I should apply to the Central Intelligence Agency, and I told her I could not deal with that daily. It would crush me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.